In a town forgotten by time, where trouble rides in with the wind and legends fade slower than scars. They chose the wrong person to provoke, and by the time they realized, it was already too late. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. The early morning sun rose slowly over Dry Creek, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. The wind whispered through brittle sagebrush as if retelling tales too old for even the dust to remember. Content from part 1 remains here. But he promised to come back, and he did. It began with smoke. Zeke spotted it first. A narrow column rising from the north fence line like the exhale of something ancient and cruel. He was mending the gate when he smelled it: burnt wood, kerosene, and something sour. "Fire!" Tom shouted from the west field. Zeke didn't hesitate. He dropped the tools and ran. June was already sprinting from the barn, a bucket in each hand. Levi trailing behind with a shovel too big for his arms. The blaze had caught the edge of the wheat barn, crawling like a serpent along the dry thatch. Zeke doused the flames while June shoveled earth, her face streaked with soot, her eyes clear and focused. It took them 30 minutes to beat it back. When the last ember died and the smoke thinned, Zeke turned to find the source. A horseshoe. Print in the mud, fresh, deep. June followed his gaze. "It was Pike," Zeke nodded. "He's trying to scare us off." She spat. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with." By the next morning, someone had cut the water line to the north well. 2 goats were missing. And the barn door, the one Zeke always secured with a hand-forged latch, was open to the wind. Zeke found a note pinned to the feed barrel. "This land was never yours, Harrow. Should have stayed a widower." The boys didn't ask questions. But they didn't need to. The silence around the table was different now, heavier, like the last breath before a storm. June read the note aloud, then burned it in the stove. "He thinks he's rattling a man who forgot how to bite," she said. Zeke looked up. "He's not. Wrong. I tried to forget. For them. For peace. Sometimes peace ain't given," she said. "Sometimes it has to be earned." They spent the next 3 days reinforcing the ranch. Fences were fortified with barbed wire and old iron rails. The windows got shutters, the barn a reinforced lock. The boys took shifts with dogs at night, learning how to load a rifle and where to stand in a shootout. Zeke taught them what his father had taught him: when to fight and when to wait. June trained them to throw knives, to move quietly, to listen for hoofbeats in the distance. She told stories from towns she'd passed through of bandits in Kansas, raiders in the Utah territories, corrupt sheriffs in California. She'd seen things, done things. And the boys listened like disciples. Zeke did too. Pike returned at midnight. Sky was cloudless, the moon full. Zeke woke to the sound of horses. He rolled out of bed and grabbed the shotgun from behind the door. By the time he got outside, June was already on the porch, a rifle aimed steady at the main gate. 7 of them, she said. Zeke counted. Pike and 6 others, all drunk, all armed. "Come out, Harrow," Pike shouted. "Come out and say what you should have said years ago. This land ain't yours. It never was." Zeke stepped onto the porch. "Go home, Darryl," Pike laughed. "Home? This is home. My daddy wanted this spread. Your woman stole it with her pretty eyes and lies." June stepped forward. "She married a man who could stand upright without whiskey, that's all." Pike's face twisted. "You got a mouth on you. Might be time someone shut it." He raised his pistol. Zeke fired first. The blast hit Pike's hat clean off. Not a kill shot, a message. "You got one chance, Darryl," Zeke growled. "Right out or right into hell." The standoff froze. The boys emerged from the barn, rifles raised, silent, steady. June didn't blink. It was Levi who broke the silence. "If you shoot." "My pa, mister. I'll shoot your teeth into next Tuesday." The gang blinked. Pike hesitated. Then laughed. Kids with toys. You gonna hide behind your boys, Zeke? Zeke took a step forward. No, I'm standing in front of them. And June beside him, and I'm standing beside him. Pike looked around, saw the odds, saw the fire in their eyes, and lost his nerve. He turned his horse. This ain't over. But it was. Everyone knew it. He just hadn't figured it out yet. For a while. Things were quiet. Then came the storm, literal and otherwise. One night, as thunder cracked over the valley, Pike made his final move. He came with fire again. But not to the barn. This time, to the house. It was June who smelled the kerosene first. She shouted. Zeke jumped from the bed, pulling boots on as smoke poured under the door. Boys, out back, now! The fire spread fast. Faster than it should have. June smashed a window. Zeke tossed Levi through first, then the others. He went last. They lost the kitchen, the study, but not the house. Not all of it. Rain came just in time. By dawn, the east wing was charred, but the bones held. So did they. Zeke stood in the ash. June beside him. The boys behind. I wanted peace, he whispered. June touched his arm. Then let's take it. He looked at her. Together. That night, they rode. All of them. To Pike's ranch. No guns. Just hammers. They boarded every window. Tore down every fence. Lit no fire, but left every gate swinging. Pike returned the next morning to find his empire in shambles. He went for Zeke. But this time, the sheriff was waiting. June had written letters, spoken to judges, gathered statements. Turns out Pike had warrants in 3 counties. He went quietly, and Dry Creek breathed. Zeke rebuilt the east wing. The fences, the part of himself he thought buried with Mary. And when June finally said, I ain't a bride, but if you're asking, I might stay, he nodded once. I'm asking. They married in the barn. No preacher. Just promises. She wore boots. And he smiled, for the first time in years. The moon hung low over the Harrow Ranch, pale light slipping through tattered barn slats like whispered warnings. June Mercy Holloway stood at the edge of the corral, her denim sleeves rolled just above elbows, hands clenched on the rail. Behind her, the 6 Harrow boys huddled in ragged coats, eyes wide and silent. Ezekiel Harrow Zeke knelt beside the trough, rubbing the weathered wood as though it might whisper secrets of coming danger. But no matter how long he listened, the wood stayed silent. They had expected Darryl Pike to strike at dawn, when the world was still and sleepy, but he never played by rules. He preferred fear. And so he came under the cover of night, his lantern, a beacon for 6 men draped in shadows, rifles low and voices stifled. June could taste the tension in the chill air, a copper tang she knew well from years riding the raw edge of lawless territory. Stay behind me, she whispered, voice low as rattlesnake hiss. The boys pressed closer, silent and trembling, their trust in her as fragile as the spring grass under frost. Zeke lifted his gaze, the lantern's glow revealing lines of exhaustion and steel in his set jaw. He nodded, then turned to shovel a handful of water into his hat, splashing it across his neck. Bring it on, he said, voice hollow, almost like a dare he didn't quite believe. June's heart thumped, not from fear but from fierce resolve. She tightened her grip. Over the weeks, she had learned the ranch's rhythms, the cadence of the wind, the careful geometry of the fences, the hidden hollows where rattlers coiled. Tonight, every lesson mattered. A twig snapped beyond the fence. A man's boot pressed into soft dirt, a lid horse shifting. June's instincts snapped forward. She pivoted, yanking the coiled rope from the rail and tracing its braided leather with trained eyes. Out of the dark, Pike emerged first, a tall silhouette with broad shoulders and a hat pulled down low, brim, casting his face in ominous shadow. He paused at the trough's edge, lantern held high. I was wondering when you'd show, June said, voice echoing across the corral. "Hello, Mercy Holloway," Pike called back, lantern light revealing his leering grin. "Didn't expect you to be the one answering the gate. Thought you might be too busy letting those 6 little harrows starve you out." June's braided rope swung a slow arc. "They're not biting." "Neither am I." Zeke stepped forward, hands open. "Daryl, go home." Pike's laugh ricocheted between the fence posts. "Home? After what you did to my land claim? After I lost everything." He spat into the dirt, then raised his lantern so it shone on June. "My boys and I aim to get back what we lost." June's gaze flicked to the boys. Tallest John stood straight, chest puffed in imitation of his father. Frail-born Aaron trembled but kept his eyes on June's back. Drawing courage from her stance, 6 men stepped forward behind Pike, rifles slung over shoulders, muzzles glinting pale. June inhaled, feeling each flicker of breath inside her chest hers. "Zeke's, the boys, and let it steady her. You think you can march onto this land and take it by force?" she asked, voice low but carrying. Pike tossed the lantern to one of his men. "We can, and we will." In a fluid motion trained by 1,000 dusty sunrises, June snapped her rope over one forearm and drew the other across her waist, hand meeting the smooth wood grip of her Colt .45. The air hummed as if charging itself. Then, a single shot cracked, red tracer sparks in the gloom. June's shoulder jerked as a bullet tore through her sleeve, grazing skin and ripping denim. She staggered but stayed upright, gunning her legs wide to brace. A roar cut through 6 voices raised in unison. "Shoot her!" Zeke lunged forward, but June held him back with a hand pressed to his chest. Her breath came fast. Pain flared hot and sharp, but her eyes shone. "No," she gasped. "Don't." Through the pain, she saw young Samuel Hartman to her left, a boy of 15, barrel-chested and deadly serious. He knelt beside June, whipcord rope looped at his feet. In a heartbeat, rope snapped from hand, coiling around the lank frame of Hartman's horse. The animal reared, neighing, then thundered backward, dragging rope with it. Spark flew as twisted leather caught metal. Hartman had sought to disarm his steed to prevent it from spooking the others. Crack! Another bullet struck wood behind June, splinters showering sparks. Pike barked orders. Men fanned out, rifles aiming at shapes in the darkness. June's Colt clicked, half-chambered. She drew it with fluid grace, grip firm despite the wound. "You want this land?" she asked, raising the pistol so the moon caught its silver barrel. "Come take it." For a breathless moment, the world slowed. 6 rifles pointed, muzzle lines cutting the darkness like teeth. June's Colt leveled. Zeke's hand landed on her shoulder, not to seize the gun, but to anchor her. 6 boys pressed back, refuge in their father's steady presence. Then came a sprint of hoofbeat 6 of Zeke's horses, saddled and restless. The smallest Gabe leaped forward, nearly tripping over himself. June's heart clenched. She recognized the hope in his eyes, but Pike saw only prey. "Kill her, kill them all!" he roared. The moon's pale eye hovered as rifles cracked again. June fired one shot, smoke curling in moonlight, ringing hollow but true. Second shot came from June's left, Zeke intercepting Hartman's would-be opponent with his Spencer lever action. The echo booming like a cannon, the man staggered back, dropping rifle. Hartman scrambled, using the rope to ensnare another attacker's leg. Men crashed to the ground, curses swallowed by dust, but 5 still advanced. June's wound burned. She tasted blood and grit. She pivoted with practiced poise, Colt hammer clicking smoothly. Bullets whined through the night. Men fell, rifles clattering. Suddenly, from behind the wavering ring of conflict, a silhouette emerged. Amos Granger, the old whiskey trader, riding Old Jet with a dozen rifle-toting locals. Together they fanned out, puffs of smoke marking each discharge. Chaos bloomed. Men scrambled. Horses whinnied, and June's chest heaved. Zeke shouted above the din, "Stand down! You sons of—" But one of Pike's men seized an opening and leveled a shot at Gabe. The boy cried out, tumbling back. June's blood boiled. Pain forgotten, she lunged forward, Colt blazing. She caught the shooter's wrist just as the gun bucked. The bullet tore into the fence. June twisted free, sending the assailant face first into the dirt. Then she heard Zeke's roar and turned to see him tackle Pike, wrestling him to the ground beneath the broken trough. The rest of Pike's gang, leaderless and bleeding, began to scatter. Limp shots sent ricochets through the air. In the sudden lull, June dropped to her knees beside Gabe, cradling the boy's arm. Blood oozed from a shallow cut. She unbuttoned her coat, pressing fabric to the wound. "Daddy!" he whimpered, tears mixing with dust. She pressed a kiss against his forehead. "I'm here, Gabe. I got you." Above them, the moon dipped behind a cloud. June glanced toward the barn. Pike lay pinned beneath Zeke's weight, spitting curses and fear. June met Zeke's gaze. Exhaustion, relief, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. But beyond him, in the shadows near the corral gate, a dark shape moved, and the shape stood and aimed a rifle at them. June jerked upright, weapon raised, but the clip was empty. Her pulse thundered. She looked to Zeke. His rifle was empty too. They were out of bullets, and the figure's trigger finger was already tightening. The moon re-emerged, revealing the pale certainty on the attacker's face. June took a breath and braced herself. The final shot was a whisper, then everything went black. The sun rose over Dry Creek with a gentleness it hadn't shown in weeks, casting golden light across the ranch's worn fences and newly mended barn. The air smelled of wet pine and ash, the aftermath of both rain and revenge. For the first time in a long while, no smoke curled from distant fires, no hoofbeats echoed in the hills, and no threats lingered like vultures on the fence line. Zeke Harrow stood at the edge of the porch, mug of coffee warming his scarred hand, watching as his 6 boys chased a screeching rooster through damp grass. Laughter real, unbroken laughter rose into the sky like a hymn. He took a deep breath, letting it fill his lungs. Behind him, June Mercy Holloway stepped out, her hair tied back in a braid that still held strands of soot and memory. She wore a canvas apron over her flannel and denims, flour dusted on her sleeves. "Biscuits," she said, hot and fighting for space. He turned, met her eyes. "You ever slow down?" "Nope." He chuckled, and she smiled, that slow, sideways smile that made something inside him shift. They went in together. By the next week, word had spread. The town that once whispered about Zeke Harrow's solitude and June Mercy's grit now talked of something rarer, peace. The sheriff had taken Pike in chains to Calverton. Charges stuck. A judge, long weary of Pike's name in court ledgers, handed down a 10-year sentence without ceremony. But peace never lasts untested. 3 weeks after Pike's arrest, a letter arrived, sealed with red wax. No return address. Zeke opened it on the porch while June churned butter. His face tightened as he read. June glanced over. "Bad." He held it out. The message was brief. ***. You took down Pike. Respect. But he wasn't the head. Just a tail. You owe a debt. We'll collect. MK****. June took a slow breath. "Who's MK?" Zeke's voice was gravel. "Malachi Kerr." She froze. "I know that name." He nodded. "Used to run with Pike before he got greedy. Pike stole land. Malachi stole people." June set the butter paddle down. "He's worse. Much." They said nothing more that day. But preparations began again. The boys noticed. John, the eldest at 14, stepped onto the porch that night. "We fighting again, Pa?" Zeke hesitated. "I hope not, but if we are?" Zeke looked at his son. The boy stood straight, hands calloused. From fencing, eyes too old for his age. If we are, Zeke said, we stand together, but only if there's no other way. John nodded once. I'll get the others ready, quiet-like. Zeke watched him go, pride and grief tangled in his chest. June came up beside him. They're not boys anymore. No, he whispered. They're mine. The first sign came 3 nights later. Footprints in the east orchard. Large, heavy boots. Deep tread. Then the gate to the sheep pen was opened. Then the milk cow, their last from the old herd, was found dead. Throat slit, eyes wide in terror. Zeke buried her himself. The boys watched in silence. June placed a hand on the fence rail. He's sending warnings. Zeke stared down into the soil. He's making mistakes. We have to make it the last. By week's end, a man rode into Dry Creek, not Malika Kerr, but someone who rode like his shadow. Slick boots, clean coat, gold chain watch, and a mouthful of lies. He claimed to be a land surveyor. Looking into water rights, he told Sheriff. Daniels, older now, tired and cautious, didn't buy a word. He sent word to the ranch that same night. Zeke met the sheriff on the dirt road into town. He's staying at Maynard's Inn, Daniels said. Real polite, too polite. Malachi's man? Feels like it. Zeke tipped his hat. We'll be ready. June had seen men like this before. She taught the boys how to track without leaving prints, how to listen to walls, how to breathe without being. Gabe, the youngest, picked it up fastest. He crept behind the man's horse in town, followed his movements, then reported back in whispers. He's waiting, like a spider. Wants us to walk into the web. Zeke nodded. Then we bring fire instead. 2 nights later, June rode to Maynard's Inn alone. She wore her old leather jacket, the one with the buffalo braid on the shoulder. Her boots were polished. Her holster rode high. She ordered tea. The man with the gold watch sat across the saloon, sipping something expensive and dark. She sat beside him without invitation. He looked up, startled, then smiled. Miss June Mercy Holloway. He blinked. Of course, Zeke's bride, partner. He grinned. Pardon. She sipped her tea. You're not a surveyor. He chuckled. No. You're here for Kerr. He nodded. Also yes. Tell him something from me. The man leaned in. Tell him if he wants the ranch, he can come. And when he does, tell him not to bring a shovel. Bring a coffin. The man stared. Then he smiled. I like you. June stood. Don't. I bite. That night, Zeke found her in the barn, brushing the horses. Her shoulders were taut, her jaw set. He was there. He knows me now. You scared him? I invited him. Zeke looked at her long and hard, then nodded. They spent the next days in preparation. The Harrow Ranch was no longer just land and house. It was a fortress. Windows reinforced, hay bales stacked for defense, trenches dug. Old miners' tricks from June's travels were repurposed. Zeke checked the boys' rifles. John trained the younger ones. June prepared medicine. She and Levi made poultices and fire salts. They were ready. On the 6th night, Malachi Kerr came. He didn't sneak. He didn't burn. He rode. 10 men behind him. All armed, all silent. He stopped at the gate. Zeke stood waiting. Malachi Kerr was tall. Dark coat, clean boots. A scar from temple to cheekbone. He dismounted slowly. You must be Harrow, and you must be lost. Kerr smiled. I like this place. Might keep it. June stepped up beside Zeke. Kerr noticed her, nodded. You must be Mercy. You bit my man. He deserved worse. Kerr grinned. I'm here for 2 things, a debt and a reckoning. Zeke drew his shotgun, all out of debts. Then let's reckon. And everything exploded. The final battle began. Malachi Kerr fired first. The muzzle flash from his revolver lit up the darkness with a flare that seemed to sear itself into the eyes of everyone watching. The bullet hissed past Zeke Harrow's head. burying itself into a post with a crack. And just like that, the final reckoning ignited beneath the stars of Dry Creek. Zeke didn't flinch. His shotgun spoke in answer, thunderous and direct, punching a wide hole through the edge of the gate and catching one of Kerr's riders in the shoulder. The man screamed, toppled backward off his horse, and hit the dust-hard dot. The Harrow boys scattered to their pre-assigned positions, boots pounding across dry earth and gravel, rifles braced in windows, haystack blinds, and second-story slits they'd carved into the east wall. June vanished into shadow, flanking with the kind of grace that only comes from living long enough to know exactly where to place your feet in war. Kerr ducked, shouting, "Fan out!" His men responded in silence-trained, disciplined, and blood-minded. They weren't like Pike's drunkards. These were Kerr's elite. Professional predators. Zeke ran for cover behind the front trough, rolling just in time as 2 bullets struck the beam he'd been standing near a breath ago. Wood splintered. A 3rd round buzzed past his leg. From the barn came the crack of Levi's rifle, followed by Aaron's smaller, sharper shot. A cry rose from the west flank. One of Kerr's riders had taken a hit. Another volley rained down. From the porch loft, where Tom and Gabe hunkered behind the trough-fed barriers. June emerged near the chicken coop, her rifle braced against the coop's edge. She fired twice. Another of Kerr's men folded. It wasn't chaos. It was a defense ballet, choreographed in dirt, smoke, and gunpowder. Kerr hadn't expected resistance this sharp. He expected fear. What he got was fury. The fight stretched across minutes that felt like hours. Horses screamed, men cursed. The night air turned sulfurous. Zeke reloaded on the crawl, bat pressed to the side of the porch. He shouted, "Status!" Gabe and Tom holding. John yelled from the 2nd floor, "Levi's hit." June's voice cut in. "It's a graze, I got him." More gunfire. Zeke heard the unmistakable click of an empty chamber to his right. He swung, tackled a rider who'd slipped through the line, and slammed his head into the trough with a wet thump. The rider didn't rise. Zeke breathed hard, blood roaring in his ears. Then came the whistle. One of the boys, probably Aaron, signaled. From the smokehouse roof. 2 more men, coming from the south. Late arrivals. He counted their shadows. No horses. On foot. Flanking. He bolted toward them, hard a hammer. Before they could reach the barn, June was already there. She threw a handful of crushed fire salt from her pouch. The powder burst orange in their eyes. They screamed, blinded, and Zeke put both down with the butt of his shotgun before they could recover. Back toward the gate, Kerr himself strode forward, gun in each hand, expression like carved ice. He wasn't just coming to take the land. He was coming to kill. Zeke met him halfway. Their fight was wordless. 2 men, same height, different demons. Zeke dodged left. Kerr fired right. They circled, danced, clash of boot and grit. Zeke landed. The first blow, his elbow into Kerr's ribs. Kerr countered with a brutal knee to Zeke's gut. They staggered, locked arms. Kerr tried to draw his second pistol. Zeke kicked it from his hand. The weapon tumbled end over end into the weeds. Kerr snarled, grabbed Zeke by the collar, and headbutted him. Stars exploded in Zeke's vision. But he didn't go down. He drove forward, slamming Kerr into the post of the corral, then ramming a fist into his jaw with such force it sounded like wood splitting. Kerr finally stumbled. Gunfire crackled behind them. Screams faded. Zeke drew his revolver. Kerr spat blood. "Go ahead." Zeke hesitated. "Do it. Kill me. That's what makes you like me." Behind Zeke, June shouted, "Zeke!" "Watch it." Too late. Kerr's boot swept Zeke's feet. They crashed. Kerr was on top, knife drawn, teeth bared. But June was faster. She tackled Kerr from the side. The 3 of them tumbling in dust and rage. The knife flashed. June screamed. Zeke's fury became a roar. He punched Kerr's hand, breaking bone. The knife dropped. He seized it and drove it into the dirt beside Kerr's head, breathing hard. Nose bleeding. He didn't finish the kill. He held the blade inches from Kerr's eye. "No," Zeke whispered. "You don't get to die clean." He stood. The boys surrounded them, rifles aimed. Gabe trembled, but his barrel stayed steady. John said, "He the last?" June, pressing a rag to her side, nodded. Zeke looked around. 5 of Kerr's men lay dead. 3 were wounded. 2 fled. The fight was over. But peace had a cost. That night, Doc Arliss came up from Calverton. Sewed June's side with calm hands and clucked at Zeke's broken knuckles. "You fight like a mule with a badge," the old man said. Zeke grunted. "Thank you," June smiled. That was a compliment. The boys helped bury the dead. Even Gabe placed a stone. Wounded were sent to town under guard. Kerr was chained. But before the sheriff came to collect him, Zeke sat across from him by firelight. "Why us?" he asked. Kerr smirked. "Because Pike talked. Said you had something worth taking. We don't. Just dirt and work." Kerr's smile faded. "Exactly. The world don't like honest things. Makes people nervous." Zeke said nothing, just watched. The fire, they rebuilt again, the corral, the front gate, but not just the land. Zeke rebuilt something inside himself. Something slow and steady. Something that looked like healing. June healed too, 1 stitch at a time. The boys grew stronger. John began carving wood. Levi practiced fiddle. Gabe took to baking and startled everyone with the best peach cobbler Dry Creek had ever tasted. Neighbors brought flour, nails, hugs. Stories spread of the woman who milked buffalo and fired straight, of the widower who turned a ranch into a fortress, of the boys who stood like men, of the land that could not be stolen, and the town whispered a new name, the Holloway Harrow Line, a name no outlaw would ever try to cross again. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. By spring, the earth had forgotten the blood. Dry Creek bloomed with wildflowers again, as if the ground had decided enough was enough. The fire-scarred fence posts were replaced, the chicken coop repainted, and the east wall of the barn now carried a carving John had chiseled by hand, a buffalo beside a plow, wreathed in laurels. June called it the family crest. Zeke didn't say much about it, but he walked past it often, lingering just a little longer each time. The Holloway Harrow ranch grew busy. Letters came in every week. Some were offers of payment, neighbors asking to board their animals, townsfolk inquiring if the boys could train dogs or fix tools. Others asked to learn how to shoot, how to track, how to stand when the wind blew hard against you. Some just came to see the people who stood up to Pike and Kerr. Zeke didn't much like the attention. June tolerated it. Boys took it in stride. Fame to them was just another story they could pass down one day when the land was quieter. Still, not all letters were friendly. 3 arrived from territory newspapers, asking for interviews. Zeke burned those without reading. But one came from a man named Maxwell Trigg. He claimed to be a circuit judge. The envelope bore a wax seal, the handwriting elegant, the wording stern. Asterisk, asterisk, to Mr. Ezekiel Harrow and Miss June Holloway. Your names have come to represent lawless resistance. While your stand against known outlaws is commendable, there are laws, records, and ownership titles in question, particularly in light of Mr. Pike's prior land claims. I advise your immediate appearance in Calverton to settle the matter before escalation occurs. Asterisk. Asterisk. June read the letter 3 times. Zeke read it once, then tossed it in the stove. June caught his wrist before he could strike the match. We have to go. It's bait. Maybe, but so is land left undefended by silence. He didn't want to leave the boys. Didn't want to ride into another trap. But he trusted June, and she trusted the quiet she heard in Judge Trigg's tone. Not threat, Responsibility. They left at dawn. Calverton was a mud-slick place in spring. The town sat at the edge of a slow river that always threatened to swallow its own bank. The courthouse was a squat brick building with a clock that didn't work, and 2 deputies who did. Judge Trigg met them in his chambers. He was older than Zeke expected, with a sharp face and slow voice, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He offered coffee. Zeke refused. June accepted. Then he spread out a set of land claims across the table. Before Mary passed, he said, she transferred part ownership of this land under her father's name. He had a mining deed that had been dormant for years. Pike found it. Argued it gave him a right to claim the mineral rights and a share of the property. Zeke tensed. June leaned forward. Does it? No, Trigg said. Because Pike altered the documents, badly, but because no one challenged it officially, it lingered in records. Zeke grunted. So what now? Now, Trigg said, folding the papers, you do what good landowners do. File your names legally. The full deed. Together, June blinked. Together? Trigg arched a brow. You run it together. You defended it together. Might as well own it together. Zeke cleared his throat. That a proposal, Judge? Trigg smiled. No, but it wouldn't hurt to get that in writing too. They filed the papers that afternoon. For the first time, the land bore both names, Harrow and Holloway. Side by side. It felt like a wedding vow carved into the soil. When they returned, the boys had prepared a surprise. A new gate, wide, strong, sanded smooth. And across the top, burnt into the wood in deep clean letters, Holloway Harrow RANC below it, a smaller sign, all honest folk welcome. Trouble rides home in pieces. June barked a laugh. Zeke grinned. They hugged each boy. One by one, the family was whole again. But trouble never disappears. It just changes its face. One evening, a stranger appeared on foot. Thin, sunburned, eyes like polished river rocks. He held no weapon. He carried a letter. He said nothing until Zeke asked, "Where you from?" "South." "How far south?" "Where the trains run slow and the men run fast." He handed the letter to June. It bore only 4 words. "You owe the circle." Zeke frowned. "You a messenger?" "Not anymore." He turned and walked back toward the horizon. June read the note twice, then said a word Zeke hadn't heard in years. "Vesper." He froze. "The Circle Vesper?" June nodded. Zeke sat down hard. "They still exist?" "Looks like it." She turned to the boys. "Get the maps, all of them." The Circle Vesper had been legend even among outlaw circles. Not just a gang, a network, a code. Part cult, part crime syndicate. Known for retribution. You cross them, they never forget. Never forgive. June had crossed them once. And now they remembered. The ranch went quiet that week. Not from fear. From planning. Zeke built new perimeters. John constructed watchtowers. Gabe crafted early warning bells using old tin and thread. June readied packs, checked provisions, taught the boys how to travel light and disappear fast. She and Zeke argued once. She wanted to leave. Find the circle. Take the fight to them. Zeke refused. "This land doesn't run. Not anymore." She slammed a tin mug down. "I'm not putting the boys through another siege. Then we teach them to fight before it starts." June hesitated. Then nodded. They trained like soldiers. Sun up to sundown. No guns at first. Just drills, movements, commands. June showed them how to disarm, how to listen for heartbeat shifts, how to move in silence and speak with signs. Zeke added rifle care, perimeter discipline, and animal signaling. Aaron trained the dogs to detect strangers by scent. Gabe devised a trap using rope, 2 nails, and an empty coffee tin. By the end of week 2, they were more than a family. They were a militia. June stared at them across the corral one morning and whispered, We are ready. But nothing came. Days passed. No attack. No riders. No signs. Until the night the wind stopped, and someone left a black feather on their doorstep. No footsteps. Just the feather. Zeke picked it up. June stared. They're here. The wind returned at midnight, a low, strange breeze that rolled across Dry Creek like a whisper full of teeth. It came from the south, curling around the Holloway Harrow Ranch with no scent, no dust, no cry of bird or breath of coyote. Just silence. Pure and still. Too still. Zeke Harrow woke to the silence before he heard the knock. 3 taps. Even. Precise. June rolled upright beside him, reaching for the rifle propped against the knitstand. Zeke didn't speak. He just moved. Downstairs, John met him at the bottom step, eyes wide, lantern in one hand, his finger pressed to his lips. Behind him, Gabe crouched by the door, a knife in one hand, rope in the other. The knock came again. 3 taps. No footsteps. No voice. June took point. Zeke held shotgun at her shoulder. They opened the door together. No one stood there. Just a crate. Small, dark wood. No markings. Zeke stepped onto the porch, weapon raised. Nothing but wind. He turned the crate with the barrel of his shotgun. No latch. Just a lid. He nudged it open. Inside lay 6 black feathers and a stone painted red. June cursed. Zeke said, "It's begun." They woke the boys, everyone dressed for travel, even though they weren't going anywhere. That's how the circle worked. They didn't attack where you expected. They created fear first, doubt, panic. Then they struck. June gathered the boys in the parlor. "New rules now," she said. "You don't go out alone. You don't answer doors. You stay in groups of 2 or more. John, Gabe, you're paired. Levi and Aaron, Tom and Caleb, got it?" 6 nods. Zeke added, "You listen. You move when June tells you. Not after, not later, when she says now." John stepped forward. "We trained for this." June's eyes flickered. "Training's not war, but it helps." The next sign came the following morning. Zeke walked the property at dawn. Everything looked untouched until he reached the stable. The horses were fine. Tack was untouched, but in the middle of the barn floor was a pile of sand. Dry desert sand. Far too much to be natural. Shaped deliberately into a circle. In its center, a copper ring, with a buffalo carved into one side. A dagger through its eye. Zeke didn't speak. He swept it up, put it in a sack, and burned it behind the barn. June watched him do it. Said nothing. That night, she checked the rifles 3 times. It started with their water. The main well went bad. Not dry. Tainted. Zeke tasted it first. Caught the faint sourness. He spit. June smelled the bucket. They threw something in. When? To be last night. They hauled water from the creek for 3 days. June boiled every drop. The boys asked no questions. They just carried, lifted, listened. That was the worst part. They weren't afraid anymore. They were waiting. 3 days later, someone burned the SMOKEHOUSE. No attack. No shots, just fire. Set at the base, time for nightfall, hidden beneath an old trapdoor no one used anymore. June saw the light from the window and was out the door with her rifle before Zeke stood. They got it out in time, but the message was clear. We know where you are. We are patient. That night, Zeke called a vote. We leave. John shook his head. No, we fight. This isn't Pike. This is Vesper. They don't come in with pistols and curses. They starve you out, poison you, break you, Gabe said. Then we outlast them. June looked at Zeke, then at the boys. We don't run, not yet. Zeke nodded. Then we changed the game. They faked it. They rigged the ranch to look abandoned. Left clothes in a trail toward the canyon. Left burn marks on the south fence as if in retreat. Smeared goat's blood on. The porch. Then they buried themselves in the root. Cellar. All 8 of them. 4 hours. Then 6. Then 10. Then footsteps. 6 pairs. Boots. Leather. Slow. Confident. June crouched by the trapdoor. Ear to wood. Zeke held a rifle aimed at the cellar stairs. They waited. A creak above. Whispers. One of the voices was familiar. A man June had once known by name. Roscoe Vell, Circle Lieutenant. Sadistic. Smart. He said. Told you they ran. Another voice. You sure, Roscoe? They're Harrows now. They'll retreat. Build again. We'll follow. Third voice. That woman scares me, Roscoe. Then you ain't met her in the dark. June closed her eyes. Zeke mouthed now. She shook her head. Waited. Boots passed. Steps faded. They didn't emerge for another hour. When they did, the ranch was empty again. But something had changed. The circle knew they were alive and still here. That night, June wrote a letter. She sealed it with wax and gave it to Aaron. If anything happens to me, take this to Carson Post. Don't open it. Just deliver it. He took it with trembling hands. Is it goodbye? She knelt before him. It's a door. To someone who can help. He nodded. Zeke said nothing. He just loaded every gun they had. They stopped. Sneaking after that. They made noise. Built bonfires. Played the fiddle late into the night. They weren't hiding anymore. They were daring them. Come try. It worked. 2 nights. Later, the circle came again. But not like before. No fire. No poison. They came with flags. White cloth. Raised high. And one man, Roscoe Vell. He walked alone to the gate. Zeke met him. June beside him. Roscoe grinned. Miss Mercy. Still got the eyes. June cocked her rifle. Still got your teeth, I see. He chuckled. This isn't a war, Zeke said. Sure smells like one. Roscoe shrugged. Malachi and Pike, they made it messy. But the circle's bigger than revenge. Bigger than fear. It's order. You think burning our water, scaring our kids, killing our livestock is order? I think if you'd listened in the beginning, none of this would have happened. June raised her rifle an inch. Say your piece. Roscoe nodded. We want your help. Zeke blinked. Come again? You know land. You know survival. You could teach, train, build a community. Safe, structured, circle-led. June laughed. You want us to build the prison? Roscoe said. Not prison. Empire. Zeke looked him dead in the eye. We're farmers, not tyrants, Roscoe sighed. Then this was your last chance. He turned. June shot the dirt beside his foot. Next time I shoot higher. He kept walking, and from the hill behind him, 10 riders appeared. They watched. In silence, then vanished. The siege had become a war. The Holloway Harrow Ranch woke the next morning to a calm so thick it felt false. After Roscoe Vell's ultimatum, there were no riders at the fence line, no fires in the barn, no poisoned well, not a single black feather or boot print in the orchard. Even the wind stayed silent, as if waiting to see who would move first. Zeke Harrow stood on the porch with coffee in one hand, shotgun resting against his leg. The boys were scattered in shifts, John on the east post, Gabe and Levi checking the traps near the creek, Tom patrolling the fence line. June Mercy Holloway emerged from the house with her hat already on and her revolver strapped low. She watched the hills for a long while before speaking. They're not gone. No, Zeke said, just watching. Waiting, he sipped, for us to flinch. June squinted into the bright morning. They'll wait too long. That day passed slowly. The boys worked in silence. There was no joking, no wrestling, no shouting. Every step was cautious. Every tool held tight. They repaired a chicken wire fence, patched the side of the goat shed, and reinforced the cellar with fresh beams. June checked every rifle, every saddle, every trap. By dusk, the air had changed again. Still no riders, but something else arrived. A smell. Smoke. Zeke caught it first. He lifted his head mid-chop. The axe paused in midair. You smell that? John ran from the barn. South Ridge. Zeke and June mounted up before the dust settled behind John's boots. They rode hard. The boys followed on foot, flanking in pairs like they'd been trained. It wasn't their land that burned. It was the Cutler homestead. Cutler had been their nearest neighbor. A stubborn bachelor with too many goats and not enough manners. But he kept to himself. Never stirred trouble. His barn was ablaze, his house smoking. And from the fence post, a symbol hung, a black circle with a crimson V inside, carved deep. Into the wood, Zeke dismounted and ran. June called after him, but he didn't stop. He kicked in the door of the Cutler house. Inside, the man lay face down on the floor. Still breathing. Barely. The doc came from Carson. Teeth clenched the whole ride. It took hours to stabilize Cutler. 2 cracked ribs. Concussion. Burned back. Said he wouldn't give up his goats, Doc muttered. Said he told them no. Then one of them grinned and set the barn alight. June closed her eyes. Message, Zeke nodded. To us, through him. The doc asked, what do you want me to do if they come back? June said, run, get the sheriff. Doc frowned. He won't come. They scared him off 3 weeks ago. Zeke took that in, then stood, then we hold. That night they lit fires across the property. Not just for warmth or warning. For visibility. They wanted the circle to see that they were home. They were awake. And they weren't afraid. 3 days later, the circle moved. 7 riders, fast, disguised. They didn't ride up to the ranch. They struck the feed wagon on the east road. Killed the driver, took the horses. Burned the grain. June found the bodies. The boys buried them. Even Gabe. No one spoke that night. Not even John. Zeke built traps. Old style, wire snares. Spikes buried in barrels. Sand pits lined with nails and brush cover. June trained the boys in fallback strategy. If the outer perimeter fell, they'd retreat to the barn, then the house, then the root cellar. Don't be a hero, she told them. Be alive. The first real assault came 2 nights later. No warning. Just shadows and fire. They tossed torches from horseback, trying to light the stables. Zeke fired the first shot. June dropped the second torch midair. The boys opened from the flanks, pinning the riders. In crossfire, 1 circle man fell. Another was dragged screaming behind a panicked horse. The rest pulled back. They hadn't expected the family to be ready. They wouldn't make that mistake again. But one mistake had already been made. In the dark, in the shuffle, in the sound of fire and hooves, someone breached the house. Gabe was on watch inside. He had the smallest pistol, the weakest aim. He never made a sound. Zeke found him on the stairs, unconscious, bleeding from a gash at the temple, and the letter was gone. June's letter, the one Aaron had been told to deliver if anything happened. Zeke's voice shook. What was in it? June pressed her hand to her mouth, then said, names. The circle hadn't come for land anymore. They came to silence the only woman who remembered who they really were. That night, she stood in the barn, gun in one hand, lantern in the other. Zeke watched from the doorway. You could run, he said. She smiled bitter. I know, but you won't. No. He walked to her, took the gun, set it on the wall. Then wrapped his arms around her. Then we stay together. And she cried, just once. The final siege began with thunder. Rain rolled in from the west, thick and sudden. Mud soaked the roads, horses bucked. Fires sputtered, but it didn't stop the circle. They came anyway. 20 strong, Roscoe at the front. Grinning. Zeke met him at the fence, soaked through. You brought friends, Roscoe nodded. End of the line, for you. Roscoe smirked. Tell your woman goodbye, Zeke smiled. She'll tell you instead. And the trap exploded. The explosion ripped through the soaked night like thunder made of fire. Roscoe. Thel was mid-sentence when the first barrel detonated. The blast flipped his horse backward, threw 3 riders off their feet, and lit the rain with fire that burned. Sideways in the wind. Shrapnel from June's rigged gate tore through saddle leather, caught one man in the thigh, another in the shoulder. Zeke Harrow didn't blink. He stepped from the porch with his shotgun raised and his coat soaked through. Boots. Crunching over shattered boards and smoking rope. From the shadows of the barn. The boys opened fire, controlled, measured. Every shot from John was aimed. Gabe flanked left. Levian called out targets. June emerged last. Walking into the firelight like she'd been born in its shadow, the circle broke ranks, not all at once, not like amateurs, but with chaos in their eyes. They hadn't expected resistance like this. Not so soon. Not so precise. And certainly not so deliberate. But June had prepared. Roscoe tried to rally. He shouted, waved his pistol, even fired into the air. June shot the gun from his hand. Clean. It landed in the mud with a hiss. Then the rain really started. The battle spilled down the front pasture. The circle scattered to the flanks, trying to circle the barn, the house, the livestock pens. Zeke held the line at the front. Tom and Caleb rigged firebombs with turpentine jars and wax string, hurling them into the brush line as riders tried to creep around. One horse reared, bucked its rider into the creek. Another fell into a pit Levi had dug 2 days prior, snapping a leg and throwing its owner into the wire. June reloaded calmly, her long coat flapping in the wet wind. Zeke barked orders. The boys moved like a unit. They weren't just surviving, they were winning. But Roscoe wasn't done. He crawled behind a trough, pulled a second revolver from his boot, and took aim at Gabe, the youngest still standing. Zeke saw it. Fired. Missed. June. Dove, the bullet grazed Gabe's shoulder. June fired once. Roscoe dropped. His body slid into the mud with a grunt. Then silence. The remaining circle riders hesitated. Some tried to flee, but the road had been blocked. The bridge collapsed. Aaron had done it an hour before with a hammer and 4 well-placed wedges. The circle was trapped. Zeke stood in the storm, smoke curling from his barrel. Drop. Now. June flanked right. You walk out. You don't, you lie in that mud until the buzzards stop circling. One by one, the weapons dropped. First a rifle, then a pistol, then 3 more. By dawn, the circle had no more soldiers, just survivors, and even they looked ready to confess. The sheriff came late, too late. He rode in with a deputy and saw 20 men tied to the pasture fence. 1 dead and the Holloway Harrow family bandaged, armed and silent. June handed over a list. Their names, their crimes, their warrants. Half are wanted in 3 counties. The sheriff read it, swallowed. Guess I'll be needing more horses. The storm passed, but the ranch stayed wet with memory. Zeke walked the field that evening, hand on his oldest rifle. June sat on the porch, cleaning mud from her boots. The boys were inside, making stew, talking in low voices, laughing for the first time in days. Zeke joined her. You think it's over? June wiped the mud away. No, but I think they'll think twice. He nodded. About us. About this place. She stood. About what happens when you knock on a widow's door, thinking she won't answer with fire. He smiled. You're not a widow anymore. She met his eyes. And you're not alone. They rebuilt again. Together. Not just wood and wire, but memory and name. They reopened the West Field. Built a schoolhouse in the Grove. Trained a new dog, raised new chickens. And one spring morning, June found a letter nailed to the gate, not from enemies, but from neighbors. It read, "We heard what you did. We're ready to learn, if you'll teach us." June stared at the note. Zeke read it over her shoulder, and they both smiled. "Guess we're not just a ranch anymore," he said. June nodded. "We're a beacon." They called it Mercy Hollow. Not for June's name, but for the way she fought, with fury, with honor. And when it was over, with mercy. Not for her enemies, but for those who wanted to build something better, something that could survive. In bloom, even in a place forgotten by time. The sun rose over Mercy Hollow like a promise, spilling gold across the fields and painting the barn's red walls in a warm glow. June Mercy Holloway stood on the ridge, arms folded, watching as families poured through the gate for the first time. Some carried tools, hammers, plowshares, seed bags, others bore furs and hides, curiosities from distant plains. They came for work, for safety, for a chance to build something that lasted. Below, Zeke Harrow organized the newcomers. His voice, low but firm, carried across the corral, guiding teams to repair fences, plant crops, unload wagons. The boys John, Gabe, Levi, Tom, Caleb, and the still healing youngest moved with deliberate purpose, teaching neighbors how to handle mules, set snares, read the sky. The rhythm was methodical, hammer on wood, spade in earth, water to seed. Inside the farmhouse, June greeted a trembling widow whose husband had been lost to the Circle's last raid. She knelt, cupping the woman's hands in her own. "Tell me your story," June urged gently. The widow's voice broke as she spoke of homesteads burned, of children taken, of nights spent praying for dawn. June listened, her heart heavy. She remembered the terror in Gabe's eyes when he found that first feather. She felt the ache in her side where she had once been wounded. But she held herself steady, for the widow's sake, for Mercy Hollow's sake. Outside, the work soared. A new well was dug near the orchard, the old one refitted with a hand pump and pitcher spout. A schoolhouse rose near the creek, its foundation cemented with stone June had quarried herself. Neighbors chipped in. Women wove curtains for the windows, men laid rafters. The hollow careened between excitement and exhaustion, but they carried on. At midday, June slipped away to the ridge where she had first seen Mercy Hollow from the horizon. She sat with her knees drawn up, watching dust clouds roll across the plain. The wind stirred the wheat field, sending ripples like a sea of amber. In that swaying sea, she saw movement figures on horseback beyond the fence line, too distant to make out but unmistakable. Riders, scanning the new settlement, her pulse quickened. She reached for the rifle slung at her back and leaned into the slope. 2 men, then 4, then 6. They circled low, moving with purpose. She counted 10 riders. Their banners were black, trimmed in crimson, the Circle's mark. June's breath caught. She sprang up and sprinted toward the farmhouse. Her boots pounded in dust, echoing in the quiet afternoon. Inside, Zeke bustled among men repairing a collapsed beam in the schoolhouse door. "Zeke, riders on the ridge. At least 10 Circle colors." He dropped his hammer, eyes sharp. "Gather everyone," the call went out. The settlement paused mid-task. Farmers turned, children halted, oxen restlessly stamped. June and Zeke mounted Flint and Jet, galloping toward the ridge where the riders had paused. They arrived to see them. Circle men spread in a half-moon formation, weapons ready. No torches now, just steel glinting in the sun and the whispered hiss of leather straps. "Welcome to Mercy Hollow," June called, voice carrying across the distance. "Thought you might enjoy the view." Roscoe Vell stepped forward, flanked by a sheriff's deputy June recognized from a neighboring county. The deputy's eyes darted between June and the riders, uncertainty etched on his face. "This isn't beyond the law, Holloway," Roscoe said, voice silky. "We have rights too. The land is claimed in the name of the Circle Vesper. Every acre, every claim, every title ours by right of conquest." June's jaw clenched. "You lost your right the day you set fire to an innocent home." The deputy stepped forward. Now, let's settle this peaceably." Zeke dismounted, shotgun in hand, boots sinking into the wheat. "Peace? You call this peace?" Another rider laughed. Look at this place. Arms and schoolhouses. A settlement worshipping weakness. Tom reined in his horse next to Zeke. It's not weakness to protect your family. Roscoe's smile flickered. Your family? Which one? The Harrows, the Holloways? Or the fools who followed you? June's eyes flared. They followed us because we offered hope. Something you never understood. Suddenly, a shot rang out sharp measured. It bit into the circle's right flank. Gabe had taken position behind a fallen beam, pistol leveled. Roscoe's men yelped, scrambling. The deputy ducked, drawing his revolver. Roscoe snarled. Raising his pistol toward Gabe, June stepped in front of the boy, gun raised. I will not warn you again. Walk away. The deputy lowered his gun. This is out of line, Holloway. But Roscoe barked orders. Ride them down. The riders surged forward. Flint charged. Jet reared. June and Gabe dove behind the ridge. Zeke fired, sending a man tumbling. Tom and Caleb galloped in, blocking the western flank. The settlement sprang to life. Men grabbed rifles from wagons. Women brought down water buckets. Children retreated behind walls. Merchants from Calverton hurried to the center, barricading the open square. June emerged, hands steady on the rifles. Lock! Zeke stood beside her, shotgun ready. The rest of their family fanned out, taking positions within the schoolhouse, barn, and corral. Amid the chaos, the deputy dropped his gaze. June caught it, reading conflict across his face. You have a choice, she shouted. Help them and become their victim. Or help us and save innocent lives. He looked at Roscoe, fist tightening on the revolver's grip. Then slowly, he holstered his weapon. Roscoe's smile turned to fury. You traitor! June squeezed the trigger. A warning shot into the air. The deputy stepped back, raising his hands. The circle's charge faltered in that stillness. June looked across the ridge and caught sight of Dover, the traveling blacksmith. He raised a lantern, motioning to others behind him. The settlement's people stepped forward. Miners, farmers, merchants all taking up arms, not as criminals but as protectors. Roscoe's men blinked. Merchants snapped barrels, closed water troughs, were overturned as barricades. Children stood behind wagons, eyes wide. Their innocence sharpened the moment. June lowered her rifle. Mercy Hollow stands. Then the deputy cleared his throat. We're under new law here. Roscoe's face contorted. I surrender in the name of the circle. Zeke stepped forward. You surrender to Mercy Hollow. He placed Roscoe in handcuffs carved with the buffalo. The deputy clicked them shut. As the sun dipped below the ridge, the settlement exhaled as one. But in the gathering dusk, June felt a shift, a tremor beneath the earth, a whisper in the wind, and she realized Mercy Hollow was no longer just a sanctuary. It had become a symbol, and symbols, once ignited, never fade quietly. The night after Roscoe Vell's surrender came like a whisper, wet with rain and dense with silence. Mercy Hollow did not celebrate, not yet. They buried their dead first, 3 townsmen. One of the boy's friends, Caleb, and a merchant named Isabel, struck by a stray round while protecting 2 children in the barn. June Holloway stood by each grave. Said every name aloud, poured a handful of soil onto each pine. Boxed. Her hands shook only once when she said Caleb's name. Levi stood beside her, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles went white. He was only 16. June reached out and pulled him close. No words passed between them. They didn't need them. That moment was stronger than language. 2 days later, the trial began. Not in some marble hall, not in the Capitol, but right in Mercy Hollow's main square, under the same tree where the town bell now hung. The accused stood shackled, Roscoe Vell and 5 of his lieutenants. The rest of the Circle Vespers riders had either fled or been claimed by the gunfire. Judge Trigg arrived from Carson in a borrowed buggy, robes mud-stained, pistol holstered plainly at his side. He stepped down into the gathering with a scowl. And a flask. If I had a coin for every outlaw who swore they were freedom fighters, I could pay off Nevada's debt. Let's begin. The people gathered, weary but firm. Zeke and June sat at the front. The boys flanked the area, alert. "You'll have your chance to speak," the judge said to Roscoe. Roscoe's voice was thick with bravado. "I didn't order the killings. I came to claim disputed land. My men acted independently." June stood. "With respect, Your Honor, I have statements, letters, and the deputy's testimony." Roscoe paid for each raid, organized them, chose the targets. The judge raised a brow. "You have these documents?" She handed him a SATCHEL. He spent an hour reading. At the end, he handed the satchel to his deputy. "Put this man in irons and send him to the state prison. No parole, no leniency. His lies are done." Roscoe screamed. June didn't flinch. After the trial, the people gathered again, not in mourning this time, but in unity. Zeke called it the Mercy Pact. One by one, every family, every settler, every merchant and craftsman signed the Holloway Herald ledger. They would defend each other. They would grow together. They would build. The pact changed everything. The schoolhouse doubled in size within the month. June taught reading and terrain tactics. Zeke taught numbers, bookkeeping, and marksmanship. The boys, now called the Six Buffalo Sons by the neighbors, ran drills for militia training on Sundays after prayer. Even Levi began to smile again. Word spread. People came from California, from Arizona, from Dakota Territory. Some rode alone with rifles. Others came as families in wagons, former soldiers, widows, escaped debtors. They all wanted the same thing. Future, a place to belong. Mercy Hollow welcomed them all. And then a letter came from the governor of the territory. It arrived with an official seal and a brass wax stamp in the shape of a buffalo. June opened it at the dinner table. Zeke beside her. She read it aloud. "Your settlement, by virtue of its leadership, population, and defense, is hereby recognized as a provisional county seat. With this honor comes representation, allocation of funds for development, and a seat at the next territorial summit." The boys hollered. June blinked. Zeke took her hand. "We made it." But June didn't smile, not yet. She folded the letter carefully. "Now we defend it harder than ever. Trouble, after all, does not sleep. It moves, like wind through prairie grass, like crows through dead trees. Like rumors. Weeks passed. Then came word from a rider named Hollis. He'd traveled from Salt Fork, 5 days west, face sunburned and eyes haunted. "They're coming," he said. "Who?" June asked. "The Iron Church." Zeke narrowed his eyes. "Never heard of it." "You will," Hollis whispered. And what he said next turned the blood cold in June's veins. June Holloway listened to Hollis speak for over an hour. The man was gaunt, ribs visible through his shirt, dust embedded deep in the lines of his face. His voice broke twice, once when he described the ruins of Salt Fork, and again when he described what had been nailed to the church door. "They don't just take land," he whispered, eyes hollow. "They take memory, they burn records, they burn books. They burn names." He paused. "They burned my wife's name." The Iron Church wasn't a church. It was a militia masquerading as divine justice. Born from the bones of the old Silver Valley War, it wore the trappings of faith but worshipped control. Men in black coats and steel armbands, bearing symbols carved like branding irons. They claimed towns, renamed them, and demanded obedience. Those who refused vanished. Their leader was known only as Bishop Vane. Some said he was a former colonel. Others whispered he had once been a preacher who'd lost his family to famine and snapped. All June knew was this: the Iron Church was headed their way, and it was riding with doctrine and dynamite. The council gathered that night, in the old schoolhouse. Rain hammered the tin roof as voices rose in fear, defiance, confusion. "We just beat back the circle," said Harland, the blacksmith. We can't fight again so soon. June stood at the front, Zeke beside her, Hollis seated near the stove. We can't choose the timing, she said. Only the response. Old Miss Birdie stood slowly. What if we talk to them? Maybe. They just want tribute, food, passage. No, Hollis said, voice a dry rasp. They want more. He reached into his satchel and laid something on the table. It was a child's shoe, blackened by fire. Silence followed. Mercy Hollow began to prepare again. They reinforced every wall, every window, dug new trenches, moved the infirmary to the root cellar. But this time, it wasn't just the boys leading the charge. The people of Mercy Hollow had changed. They were no longer settlers. They were guardians. Farmers practiced night drills. Children were taught hiding signals. Merchants fashioned body armor from old grain tins. A bell was mounted at every corner of town, each with its own unique tone for smoke. Riders or sabotage. June rewrote the Mercy Pact. This time, she added a clause. If ever Mercy Hollow falls, the survivors will carry the truth forward. Our story will not die. Then she made 3 copies, one buried in a sealed crate beneath the school, one stitched into the lining of her coat, and one handed to Levi. You may run, she told him, but you never forget. He cried that night. Not from fear. From honor. 3 weeks passed. Then the birds stopped singing. At first, no one noticed. Then John did. He was checking fence lines near dawn. Not a chirp, he said. Not a flutter. Zeke looked up. The skies were quiet. Not natural. Not right. And then, in the distance, came the first toll of iron. Clang, clang. 3 riders, coats black, horses gray. Each with a bell tied to the pommel, ringing with every step. They rode into Mercy Hollow like ghosts. June met them at the center crossroads. Rifle across her back, pistol on her hip. State your purpose. The lead rider dismounted. He was clean-shaven, with glassy blue eyes and a calm smile. He removed his gloves slowly. We bring offer of protection, he said. Zeke stepped up beside her. We don't need protection. The rider's smile didn't waver. All things need sanctuary. We offer absolution. 1 flag, 1 name, 1 bishop. He handed June a folded parchment. It read, swear fealty within 7 days, or be unmade. They didn't wait 7 days. They returned in 3. Not with bells. With fire. The northeast ridge was the first hit. The school's old shed, newly converted to a forge, was blown apart with powder. A watchman was killed. Another boy injured. June held him in her arms as he bled. His name was Eli. He whispered, I was watching, I swear. You did good. She whispered back. He died with her hand on his cheek. That night, Mercy Hollow burned, but only in part. They held the line. Zeke led a countercharge with the sons. John dropped a torch on an ambush squad, burning them out of the orchard. Levi took his first life that night, a clean shot. He didn't speak for 2 days. June kept watch until morning. Not blinking. Speaking. Just waiting. New rider came at dawn. On foot. Unarmed. Bearing a scroll. He was maybe 15. He handed it to June. It read, asterisk asterisk, I am vain. You have struck my hand. I now extend it again. Come alone. Dusk. The stone chapel outside Coyote Bluff. Bring no weapons. Bring no lies. Bishop Vane asterisk asterisk. Zeke said, it's a trap. June said, it's a chance. Levi said, it's suicide. June looked to the horizon. I've danced with death before. I can do it again. And she saddled Flint. The stone chapel near Coyote Bluff hadn't held a sermon in 15 years. Its steeple was cracked, its doorframe warped, and its altar covered in dust and rat droppings. But that night, under a sky that looked like spilled ink, the chapel's broken bell rang. Once. Then again. Then silence. June Holloway dismounted and left. Flint at the tree line. No weapons. No lies. Only her. She walked the stone steps slowly. Her boots echoed in the hollow space as she entered. The chapel smelled of mildew, dry blood, and incense. Bishop Vane stood at the pulpit. He wore no armor, only black robes with silver embroidery, shaped like thorns and fire. His hair was white, his face pale, his eyes empty. As if someone had pulled a humanity from them long ago. June said nothing. Vane raised one hand, calm as still water. I commend your courage. I didn't come for flattery. No, you came for delay. Mercy Hollow is weak. We could have crushed you days ago. You tried. His lip curled. That was a warning. I offer you peace. No, you offer submission. He stepped forward. It's the same thing. June laughed once. Cold and low, only to tyrants. Vane circled her. You speak of freedom as though it has value. But what does it buy? Graves?